Hello and welcome to a special mini episode of the Rugby Paper Podcast, discussing and reacting to the stunning events of round 4 of the 2024 Six Nations. From Italy's historic win over Scotland to England's statement victory over Ireland, myself, Brendan Gallagher, Chris Hewett and Nick Cain discuss all. Right, well, I mean, this isn't really I'm not going to say welcome back to an episode because this isn't really an episode, but a little sort of not Super Saturday special because that hasn't happened yet, but Super Saturday kind of came a week early in round 4 of the Six Nations. And we thought of all weeks to double up, this would be the week. Saturday was stunning, to say the least. Italy beat Scotland. England beat Ireland. Our predictions absolutely shredded. Except Brendan, obviously I'll give you we may as well start there actually, Brendan. I tip my hat off to you because you stood, I laughed at you at the start of the championship because of I think it was because of the inconsistency of the predictions, not just that one in particular, but go on, have your moment in the sun. Are you feeling smug about it?
I'm not feeling smug because it wasn't that difficult a prediction really. Italy occasionally get it right, and I think there's every sign that they're going to do that on an increasing basis. And I just thought Scotland at home, and I know Scotland fans won't like this because Scotland have sort of earned the right not to be considered a minnow, but Italy always play pretty well against Scotland, and I just thought they'd have a decent shout. What I didn't expect, I didn't expect a 70,000 capacity crowd there. It was absolutely mobbed. It was fantastic to see the Stadio Olimpico, hanging out from the rafters. I wasn't expecting that. The atmosphere looked amazing, and it was a cracking match. It was a slightly error-strewn match. It wasn't quite the classic of England-Ireland, I don't think. But my God, there was some good rugby in it. And Scotland started like it was sort of like the Sevens season. I mean, that was an electric start from Scotland. I thought, hello, this could turn nasty if Italy don't start turning up, and they did. Well, we've grown to realise that this team of 24 have got a bit about them, and they hung in, and it was a terrific win, and like everybody said, it's what the tournament needed, and then what the tournament doubly needed was England to topple Ireland, and you had this perfect storm in about 4 hours of Saturday afternoon where you suddenly remembered again why we love the Six Nations so much and why when it really fires, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, Super Saturday around early, basically, which, fantastic. I think that the thing about Italy is that if you look at the players that they're now, that are now coming on stream for them, you look at Vincent, you look at Menoncello, you look at the acquisition of Liner and so on, they're now sort of adding a layer, and it's a pretty good layer, and it's definitely a big step in the right direction for them, and you could see it in the results that they've had this season. In the narrow defeat to England, obviously the last glitch again that fouled it up against France, and now beating Scotland. Yeah, they're moving.
And wasn't it extraordinary, incidentally, talking about that France match, the first kick that Garbisi takes in the 3rd minute penalty, the ball falls off the bloody tee again. Well, this time it's 14 seconds. I mean, that'll be twice in his career that happens, and it's happened in back-to-back matches.
Well, at least that one was in the open air. The first one was in what they call controlled conditions.
He's obviously got a faulty tee.
Well, you reckon he switched tees after that happened in Lille?
I'd like to know.
I reckon he must have. Obviously, no one switches style of tees, but just that particular one a little bit, because maybe one of the points had a little chip on it or something. But I'm sure he would have switched after that happened.
Is it me, or does his tee seem to be very high compared with some?
His is really
it's certainly got a number of high prongs on it, I think.
Yeah, the prongs themselves are high, but he's low.
I think Italy are fascinating at the moment. They're on the sort of Argentina road where they were for a long time a pack with not much of a cutting edge behind, and then Argentina, of course, suddenly became less dominant up front, not least in the scrum, which is very unusual for them, but hell of a cutting edge coming out of the Sevens setup that they have. Italy, they don't scare anyone up front or don't mangle anyone up front in the way that they used to in the days of Castro and Lo Cicero and Giovanelli and all those blokes. So I mean, that was a hell of a pack. But the cutting edge, they have struggled at scrum half. I think this new guy may be an answer to them. Although Varney played pretty well when he got on, but from 12 to 15 now, I mean, that back three with Lino, I think will make a big positive difference. I mean, a lot of us had him in our World Cup side for England 4 years hence when we discussed that not so long ago. And he's a loss for England, I think. And the back three that they have now with Ioane and Capuozzo, I mean, that's as good as most in the Six Nations and better than some. It's a very good back three. And Menoncello, whose praises you've sung very often in the past, Brennan, good spot. He does look an extremely good player, must say.
Yeah, he does. But
the
thing that really strikes me more than anything about what's happened is that the dynamic has changed. This in the Six Nations, this idea of Italy always being the the wooden spoonists. They may yet finish last, who knows, but it is a real shift to see a side that it is no longer a gimme. Nobody's going to take them lightly. It doesn't look like, certainly for a couple of years, and if they keep it going, because their under-20s are regularly strong, it looks like they've got the wherewithal to do so. So it's a real sea change in the Six Nations, and well overdue. Having a dead rubber every round is no good for a tournament, and that changing is massive.
I mean, that was their first home win since 2013.
Yeah,
that's 11 years.
4,000 days. Over 4,000.
So, I mean, that clearly wasn't sustainable going forward.
No, even their biggest supporters were beginning to ask the question, weren't they?
Yeah.
But if you look back in history, the amount of slack that the French would cut when they came into the international championship back in the 1800s and frozen to death, whenever it was, I mean, it took them a long time to win more than a very, very occasional game, a long time. And look what happens to it. I mean, these countries need nurturing. And there was a piece in the Telegraph after this saying all talk of Italy being relegated from the Six Nations or thrown out of the Six Nations must now end, in that telegraphy kind of, this must happen kind of thing for all the retired colonels in Tunbridge Wells and the tinfoil hat brigade. But the thing is, it's never an argument about Italy just being thrown out. The argument is always what happens to the sides beneath and where do they go? And the argument against relegation that's put forward, and it is put forward by very senior people in rugby governance, is that Scotland, for instance, will simply say, if we finish bottom and go and are relegated, we go bust. End of story.
Yeah.
And Wales too, I would suggest.
That just puts you in that gives you an idea of the difficulties of what we're talking about. But that doesn't help Georgia and Portugal. No. So, hey.
Just one little cautionary note about Italy, and I think we all emotionally support them and have all taken a huge interest. They haven't got it right up front yet. I've been worried for a while that Rutzer is the only line-out option. Yeah. That and a ball over the top to Brex are their two line-out options. Now, that's not going to last very long at the top.
He's quietly heroic, Rutzer.
He is quietly heroic. They've got to find another line-out guy. They look quite well balanced, didn't they? They brought in the big fellow whose name I've just slipped my mind, against France, who gave him a line-out option at 6. It'll come to me in a minute. And they just need that second line-out option, because Cannoni in the second row is a good, hard-working beast, but he's no line-out guy. Ross Vincent might be a line-out option because he's quite a light guy, like Lawrence used to be in the England back row. You could throw him up, but I haven't seen them use him like that yet. But they really do need to work on that, because you can't survive with just one line-out jumper in Test rugby for very long.
It'll be interesting to see Italy's stats, line-out stats for the Six Nations, because it almost feels like they've lost more ball on their throw than they've won. So, yeah, that probably does need to change. Brendan, I'm going to sing your praises again, because if I remember, memory serves me correctly, you also labelled Tommaso Menoncello, who I was obviously going to mention, as your one to watch for the entire tournament.
Did I? Yeah, I almost did that last tournament as well, didn't I? Because I think ever since that under-20s,
every tournament he's playing, you do it.
Well, him and Ross,
you're about to be right.
One so good 2 years ago in the under-20s. Yeah. They were the standouts. You could just see they were going on the fast track, whichever direction, club, university, Exeter, Benetton. And I'm not remotely surprised that both of them have come through with fine colours, you know.
Menoncello is a massive, massive guy. He's absolutely enormous.
He's a unit.
But yeah, him at 12 and Brex at 13, they've got a very, very solid midfield pairing that will serve them quite well going forward, I think. Yeah, obviously, the weekend started in the best possible way in Italy, and I think we've got another episode on Wednesday with Maxime Mermoz. We'll look forward to the actual, well, Super Saturday by name, but this was Super Saturday by nature this past weekend. Let's move on to another game. Well, first of all, I want to talk about, just very briefly, the best moment of the weekend, in my opinion, or the most jaw-dropping moment, which was Nolan Le Garrec's 40-yard reverse pass, which was, I mean, I described it to my brother at the time, the most unnecessary piece of skill the Six Nations has probably ever seen. Will we agree with that? It
was bloody marvellous, wasn't it? I mean, I've seen loads of guys practice and do that. Rarely do they actually do that in a game. Gareth Edwards used to do it occasionally. But to do that in front of 78,000, and the game wasn't won then, if I remember. The game was won. I thought, well, the confidence this bloke has got, that was fantastic. I got up and cheered when I saw that.
Yeah. Jonathan Davies in the commentary said there's no way that he meant that. There's no way that, you know, and I don't agree. I think that he knew that there was that the Welsh press was not that fast on it, that the French were reasonably deep, and I think he threw it because he thought that it might fall in. I don't know whether it was going to be Ramos's hands as it actually was, but it might fall into somebody's hands in a blue shirt, and that it would give them something, and it gave them a chance. You know, I mean, I can't remember whether that was that finished with, you know, the French going quite close, I think.
Yeah.
I know what Gareth Chilcott would have said about it.
What's that?
He would have if he'd been on the field, he would have gathered his troops around and said, "Here, that bloke who thinks he's clever, he won't be so clever after the next ruck." That would be, and that's the right way. But hey, look, apart from the
you wouldn't be able to catch it.
He's a very, very good player.
He had a great match, didn't he?
He's a very good player, and they've got him coming out of their ears. I mean, the kid who played for the under-20s last year, Jeannot, who I think plays for Clermont, is getting a lot of first-team rugby now. They do have some. I mean, it's not unusual for France to throw up scrum halves.
This is the podcast in which we've heard is that France without Dupont are sunk. I said in the column that Garrec, and I've said all the way through that Le Garrec is a bloody good player, and you know, very, very quick, and a full skill range. You know, terrific player, played with great pace. Luku is the guy who the mantle of Dupont obviously weighed very heavily on, because he has played, you know, pretty mediocrely, really. And, you know, but when he came on at the end, he
played well again, didn't he? Match one.
So, but, you know, he found the weight of that Dupont mantle too much. Le Garrec, you know, just went out and played.
And the other point, Nick, is that was the Dupont moment, because Dupont does something incredible in every match. And France gather energy and off they go. And that was like a Dupont moment. You know, you could imagine him doing that. Well, Le Garrec did that, and France didn't look back afterwards.
No, absolutely. I think the one, I thought that was a fascinating game, actually. We talk about Super Saturday. I thought the game in Cardiff was fascinating, and I thought Wales played it the right way. They were moving that pack around. But again, going back to Jonathan Davies in commentary, it used to be that clash of styles meant something. It meant something. But now you can exhaust a very, very heavy pack of opposition forwards, bring them to their knees.
Yeah.
And then you got to do it all over again. And I mean, I'll write about it this weekend, but I think it's a serious, serious issue for rugby. That was completely distorted. And you could tell in Jonathan's voice during commentary, and I think he's a very good second voice, a very good analyst. He said, we've got no chance. He kept on saying, we cannot stop this. We've got no chance. I mean, they brought on blokes who were bigger than the ginormous 920, 930 kg starting pack.
984.
And then they bring on people who are bigger.
Yeah.
And it's... Tell you what, if they had kept Pasolo Tuolangi in, obviously he was ill, instead of Thibaut Flamand and started with Meafu, we would have had the first ever international pack weighing over a ton. Which is, it's only a matter of time. And you're right, you contain, well, just about contain Uini Atonio for 50, 55 minutes, and then Georges-Henri Colombe comes off the bench, and he's just as big and just as powerful. So no, their pack is fearsome. But look, guys,
listen, the three of us again have talked about this imbalance of the game because of the bench, and you're right, it's coming to a head. Because not having guys who can, it's an 80-minute game, and not having blokes on the field who can play for 80 minutes is just, it's anti the principles of rugby. It's a new dynamic. It's bloody good for coaches, as Johnny Bell was saying last week, and so on and so forth. But is it good for the game in the end?
No. You're dead right.
We've all.
The image that lasts with me is that 3-year-old hooker that Wales brought on for the last couple of minutes for his debut. I mean, he was playing number 8 last season, this kid.
Yeah.
And he was laughing. The notion, I mean, he threw in crooked and his first line out throw on his own line, and has now got a scrum against that lot, 5 meters out, and he was laughing. I mean, fair play. The kid's obviously got something about him to see the funny side of it. But it was an interesting image that he's looking at what's against him, and they're all fresh, or most of them are fresh, and thinking, well, this is going to be an interesting view of my own backside that I'm about to get. I'm about to see parts of myself that I've never seen without the aid of a mirror. And it was both funny and horrible, actually, at one and the same time.
Well, you do that often, Chewy?
All the time. All the time. In fact, as we're on screen, I can show you how I do it if you like.
No. Right, you're about to be removed from the call again for the second week running. Guys, we're slightly obviously pushed for time because, like I say, this is just a mini episode. We'll do the full sort of preview, particularly for Super Saturday at the weekend. Let's talk about England. Obviously, listeners will wonder why we haven't mentioned it yet. I just know that as soon as we do, obviously, that'll take us to the end of the episode. Just talk about the emotions watching that game. Do we feel obviously elated? Do we feel a sense of relief as well? And it feels like they finally backed up what they were saying about this New England. And we saw from minute 1 to minute 80, actually in England that we're excited to see play.
I thought it was elation in a non-partisan way. We try and be completely neutral here. I was just utterly delighted to see 15 England blokes, and then the ones who came on going for it, playing rugby at pace, showing the skills, just giving it the full Monty. And I just feel that is so missing often with England. And there was cleverness and organisation, and it's still not completely there. But to see, Furbank and Mitchell playing at their best, at the pace they like to play, in an England team that has delivering, it was quite joyous to watch. And I wasn't there, but I'm told the crowd was just all-time loud, and that's what England have been missing. But anyway, over to Nick. Nick's the one who needs to give it the full Monty here.
Well, look, I mean, it was a backs to the wall classic, because they were in danger of a massive, the disconnect between fans and the team has been growing and growing and growing. So this couldn't have been, more timely. Well, it could have been right at the beginning of the Six Nations, but, it's taken them this. I'd love to know what's gone on behind the scenes, because I get the feeling that the players have said, we want a change here. We want to bloody well play in a different way. And they've gone out and they've done that. And they did it with real verve, just unrecognizable, totally unrecognizable from the team that played against Scotland and the 2 games before, even though they scraped wins. So it is a turning point. And the thing is that they now, the real thing is backing it up. And you can see, not with Le Garec, but you can see that with Ramos at 10, the French have got a real defensive, a huge hole. And England have got to go. I mean, France will be trying to, plug that during this week, but England have got to really go after it. And they look as if they're quite capable of going after it as well. But listen, it was an absolutely necessary revolution, really, for England. But whether it can, whether they can carry it on, because they've been terribly, terribly inconsistent. It's taking it now and growing from that point. Furbank, I thought, was the spark. He's the ignition man. And almost whatever number he has on his shirt, I'm not sure that matters. But there was one moment in the game where where Crowley put up a ball right on the England crossbar almost, and it was a wicked up and under, and Furbank rose to claim it. And if he hadn't, that game might have gone for England. I thought that he was terrific, and among a large number of people who played pretty well at the top of their game. So a fantastic result for England, but one that they have to take on.
Mitchell coming back in and playing at the pace that suits him was revelatory, really, in the England context. It's not revelatory for people who watch Northampton. But the game was played at fantastic pace as well. I mean, Ireland played at a good pace, and quite why Andy Farrell took Josh van der Fleer off when he was outstanding. I mean, that's the best I've seen. I mean, he's a really good player, patently. That's the best I've seen him play in a long time. So that was a bit odd. I felt a couple of those players. I'm not sure Conor Murray's quite with it anymore, and obviously losing Gibson Park to the wing as they did. So there were a few cards that fell in England's favour, but that's not. And I'm not, the great sort of flag waving patriot, as you know, but it was a terrific England performance. I mean, a really, really very good England performance. The only thing that completely gets my goat is Christ, every picture. I can understand why every picture's of Marcus Smith. I can understand that he drops a goal, but it was a shot to nothing. They had the penalty in front of the sticks anyway. It wasn't the hardest drop goal ever. Okay, he landed it, fine. On the radio today, on the BBC's flagship news radio programme, there was a comparison between that drop goal and Wilkinson's in the World Cup final. I mean, pass me a rope. I mean, what are these people talking about? And it goes back to the Tuolangi adulation. It's this insistence on picking on one guy and making him some sort of hero, irrespective of what everyone else has done. George Ford's goal kicking was pretty poor on Saturday. His game management was bloody brilliant. He played really, really well, George. And Stuart Barnes, I think, in the Times made that point. And Barnes has been banging the drum on behalf of Marcus Smith for months and months and months. But Ford was terrific. And going back to your point, Nick, about what happened behind the scenes, I can quite imagine that George Ford's had plenty to say, because he's a big, big voice in that environment, and he would have had plenty to say on the subject. So I'm with George on this one. And much as I think Marcus Smith's a brilliant player, it wasn't all about Marcus Smith. And I wish some editors would get a grip.
Yeah, and it was the ultimate team performance. And if you're going to eulogise anybody, and I don't think you should, but Bernal had a game for the ages. I doubt if we've ever, that was as good, if not better, than anything Lawrence ever produced at number 8 as an individual performance. But it was the tip of the iceberg.
Slow down. he was outstanding.
I can't remember a bloke on this
Gallagher.
kind of role. I cannot remember an England player. I mean, you can make a case for Itoje, I suppose, recently, but strung together a series of stellar performances. But it's
2 years of stellar performances.
but it's the nature.
I remember who he's playing against. That's
it's the nature of the beast
row.
with Earl. That
that's the Ireland back row, who some people would pick as a Lions unit here and now. He took them on and he showed them up.
What? Crikey. If that had been in an all-black shirt, we'd have been talking about God knows who.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in a tremendous vein of form. He really is in a remarkable vein of form.
Yeah, but he didn't take on the Irish back row single-handed. Chesham had a very good game. Yeah. Underhill had a very good game. Ben Earl was the outstanding member of a very good back row.
And the Chesham selection was really interesting and good. It's all this. It's this balance thing, isn't it? The England back row has not looked right all season, and I'm not the biggest Roots fan, but I was prepared to give him time. Let's see what he can do. But just physically, it wasn't the right balance. England, of all teams, like that big unit at 6. They enjoy having the big unit there, and he rose his. He sort of got his game going again, didn't he? Because he hasn't been brilliant.
No, I would have picked Cunningham South to start ahead of him.
And actually, how good was he off the bench for 10 minutes before he got crocked?
Yeah. He's ruled out now, isn't he, of the France game? I think he's not.
That looked quite a serious knock to me.
Yeah, he's out of the France game,
which is a big shame. It's a massive shame. But yeah, I mean, you've mentioned a lot of the names there. George Martin made a massive impact as well. We knew exactly what he would bring, like he did against South Africa, and he did exactly the same thing. Ollie Lawrence had probably his best game in an England shirt. Correct me if there are any performances.
No, that would be his best game, I think.
Yeah, Faye Waboso did exactly what he hoped.
Really good again. Really exciting. Exciting.
Yes, he is.
But I don't think that you can underestimate. I mean, you've said George Ford will have had a lot to say, but perhaps he did. But for me, the dynamic in this England backline, what's changed it is that Northampton element, as you said, Mitchell, Burbank, Freeman. Those three are joined up. They know what each other are doing, and they've bought something.
And they have a really intelligent footballer in Slade, who can make those
with them,
those adjustments in real time, just to understand what he's playing around. So I mean, look, if you've got some real brains in your back line, and England have. I mean, Furbank, has had a fair bit of experience at 10. He understands the game. Freeman, multi-positional, understands the game. Slade patently is a tactician, a strategic thinker on the field, as is Ford. You put those together, and you're not just relying on heft. You're thinking your way through a game, and that's. I really like to look at that England backline. Must say.
Yeah, so do I. I think that's the first time we've seen out and out the Northampton Alex Mitchell in an England shirt. The first time we've seen him play sort of totally unencumbered by the heavy England shirt that Steve Borthwick was talking about. I feel like we as a podcast should probably as well hold our hands up and say that obviously last week we pretty much unanimously said England would take to the skies against Ireland, and they'd go to sort of the plan against South Africa, so to speak, to choke, stifle, etc. And I think we as a podcast probably have never been happier to be proved wrong.
And one little caveat on that, we were talking before the team was announced. I think we rather feared that George Furbank would be dropped. Ollie Lawrence might not be retained. I think we were fearing the worst. I reckon if we'd known then that they were definitely in the team, we might have thought, well, you're not going to pick those and play a kicking game, an out-and-out kicking game. But that is just...
I don't know. They've done it before, Brent.
Well,
that was a brilliant piece of PR spin, Brent. I mean, you got a whole new career opening up in front of you.
Well, we've got to defend ourselves.
In fact, the royal family need you today.
I think our video was intercepted and photoshopped and edited.
But no, we're more than happy to hold our hands up and say thank you, England, for proving us wrong. Can't wait now when Manu Tuolangi's back in the midfield this weekend for France, Chris.
Looking forward to it already.
No, but we will look ahead to, like I say, Super Saturday by name, even though Super Saturday by nature may have already happened. But guys, thank you so much for joining me for the mini episode, and I'm sure you enjoyed the weekend as much as I did. It certainly sounds like you did. And Maxime Mermoz is on Wednesday, so I'll see you all then.
We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday, and to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.